My son died from starving and overtraining himself, all because his girlfriend mocked his body. But that girl kept turning other boys into her next joke. I couldn't stay silent any longer. By the time spring rolled around, Sarah had cemented her place in every conversation the school held about grief, mental health, and resilience. Her face was printed on the flyers for the student wellness panel, her name brought up during staff meetings as a symbol of strength. She stepped on stage at the spring assembly holding Jake's hoodie like it was a relic. Not the final thread in the unraveling of my son, her voice cracked in all the right places. She spoke of boys being expected to be strong, of Jake struggling silently, of wishing she'd seen the signs. The crowd stood. Teachers dabbed their eyes. Students hugged her as she stepped down. But I didn't look at her. I watched everyone else, because by then, I had stopped viewing Sarah as the problem. The real danger was the system that let her thrive. The applause she received didn't come from truth. It came from everyone's need to believe a comforting version of events. That Jake had been loved. That his death had inspired growth. That nothing needed fixing. That night, I opened a new account online. No names, yes, no photos, just facts. I began sharing screenshots from Jake's journal, his messages, his pleas, lined up against Sarah's public posts. She had written he never told me he was struggling. Underneath, I posted a screenshot from Jake's notes. I texted her yesterday that I feel like I'm falling apart. She said I was being dramatic. The account didn't go viral, but it started whispers. Some students DM'd to ask if it was real. Others said thank you. I didn't reply. I just posted. Then Alexandra messaged again, urgently. Sarah, she said, had started mentoring a new boy, David Chen. He was soft-spoken, heavier, kind, the type Sarah liked to mold. I looked up her latest photos. One showed David, sweating through his shirt, his arms slimmer than before, standing next to Sarah with a caption, "Some boys are worth saving." I saw it instantly, a new project. I reached out to Ms. Price, the school counselor. I brought her screenshots, dates, quotes. She listened with a pleasant, practiced face, then gently suggested I was still grieving, that maybe I was seeing patterns that weren't there. She mentioned how beautiful Sarah's bracelet fundraiser had been, how her own daughter had been moved. That's when I knew. Sarah wasn't hiding. She didn't have to. The adults were helping her. They wanted her story to be redemptive. If she were exposed, they'd have to admit they'd failed Jake. And now David too. So I turned to people with nothing to protect. That weekend, I met Trevor's parents again. This time, his younger brother brought a camera. He had filmed practice sessions for a highlight reel. In one video, Sarah's voice came through from off-screen. Clear, calm, direct. She told Trevor what to say, how to say it, when to flex, and how close Jake needed to be standing to hear. It was a script. Trevor sat across from me, red-eyed, ashamed. He said Sarah had called it a test. She wanted to see if Jake would crack. He'd worn the hoodie on command, said the lines she fed him, laughed the way she told him to. He thought it was just teasing, until Jake started waking at 4 a.m. and starving himself. I didn't yell, I didn't console, I just let him speak, because I knew now Jake's humiliation wasn't an accident. Sarah had orchestrated the whole thing, and now she had started again, with David. The next break in Sarah's carefully constructed image didn't happen during some dramatic courtroom confession or public meltdown. It happened in a rundown family restaurant, the kind with peeling menus and ceiling fans that creaked when the air conditioning kicked in. She and David were sitting in a corner booth, the faux leather cracking beneath them. Her smile was dialed in to gentle, and his posture was as deflated as the worn seat cushions. A waiter stopped by to refill their waters and, in an innocent attempt to connect, mentioned Jake. Something about the recent memorial in the park, something kind, something simple. That was all it took. Sarah's face tensed, her smile vanished. She turned to the waiter with a tone so sharp it sliced through the background noise. She told him to stop bringing that up, that people needed to let her heal, that she was tired of being dragged backward. Her voice didn't tremble. It cracked like a whip. The entire restaurant fell quiet. David's shoulders curled inward. Trevor, seated a few tables away with his little brother, later told me it was like a switch had flipped. The grieving girl vanished, and what remained was a teenager who couldn't keep her mask on for one more second. From that moment on, the cracks multiplied. A teacher overheard her making a joke about how grief got her out of finals. Another noticed her scholarship essay sounded oddly familiar. It turned out to be lifted, nearly word for word, from a public grief support forum. But the worst came from a staff member who caught her in the school restroom before Jake's candlelight vigil. She wasn't crying, she wasn't mourning, she was rehearsing. She stood in front of the mirror, hoodie draped over one arm, eyes locked on her own reflection. Her expression shifted, eyebrows furrowed, Mouth parted, blink, sniffle, blink again. She wasn't grieving. She was calibrating. Alexandra saw her that day. She didn't speak to anyone immediately, but 2 days later, she sent me a video, 20 seconds long. Sarah in front of that mirror, checking angles between poses, repeating the same facial expression again and again like she was filming a commercial. You don't watch something like that and walk away unaffected. Because grief, true grief, isn't polished. It isn't timed. It doesn't check the lighting or fix the eyeliner. What Sarah displayed wasn't vulnerability. It was performance. And while Sarah rehearsed, David deteriorated. He stopped eating full meals, tracked calories with obsessive precision, ran before sunrise and again at night. His sister noticed the change and tried to talk to him. One evening, he cracked. He told her that Sarah had been sending him pictures of fitness models, comparing them to his own body. She praised him in public but tore him down in private, said he was too soft, too slow, that he hadn't earned his hoodie yet. Alexandra sent me screenshots from their group chats. Sarah had called David boring, mocked him for crying, joked that maybe hunger would toughen him up. It wasn't flirting, it wasn't teasing. It was cruelty, dressed in praise. I told David's sister to show their parents. At first, they dismissed it. It's hard to admit that someone you liked, someone you thought was grieving, could be quietly brutalizing your child. But then they looked under his bed and found the supplements. Opened his app and saw the calorie logs. Checked his phone and read the messages. They saw what I hadn't seen in time with Jake. That weekend, David collapsed mid-run. His body had given out. Stimulant pills, no proper food, dehydration. He was rushed to the hospital, pale and shaking, stabilized but silent. When the doctor asked what happened, he didn't cry. He didn't make excuses. He just whispered. It wasn't enough. While he lay in recovery, Sarah was preparing her most elaborate performance yet. Jake's birthday was approaching. She was organizing a vigil on school grounds, choirs, a slideshow, guest speakers, even donation links. She called it Turning Pain into Purpose, a memorial for Jake. She wasn't remembering him. She was recasting herself. The posters were already printed, the hashtags already trending, but this time something was shifting. Whispers were surfacing. Students began deleting tribute posts. Teachers who once defended her became quiet. Parents who donated started asking where their money had gone. Even her inner circle stopped tagging her in their stories. Then Trevor handed me a flash drive. No explanation, just a small plastic rectangle and a nod. I took it home, plugged it in, and opened the folder. Inside were audio recordings. In one, Sarah laughed. Jake was too easy. Honestly, kind of disappointing. In another, she bragged about her vault, a collection of items from the boys she'd fixed, hoodies, notes, bracelets, each labeled like artifacts. Jake's file was marked in capital letters, hoodie, masterpiece, and that was it. No more ambiguity, no more benefit of the doubt. This wasn't misguided mourning, it was manipulation. The weight of truth was no longer mine alone to carry. It had begun to shift, to Trevor, to Alexandra, to David's sister, to the teachers and classmates who finally stopped pretending. The silence that once protected her had cracked, and through those cracks, Jake's voice was starting to come through. Every story of exposure has a tipping point. It doesn't begin with a headline. It starts with a single person deciding to stop looking away, and then another, and then another. I had been collecting evidence like a man stranded in a storm, not knowing if anyone would ever care. But now, the tide had started to turn. Sarah's mask wasn't just cracking, it was slipping. The first real breach came from an unlikely place, Coach Miller. He was the kind of man who stayed out of drama, trusted, steady, neutral. But one rainy Wednesday afternoon, he stopped me in the school parking lot and asked quietly if I had a moment. In his office, but he pulled up a grainy video file. Months ago, the gym had been fitted with a new security system. Most of the footage sat ignored, unless something got broken. But guilt has a strange way of making people curious. Coach had started going back through the files. What he found chilled him. The video showed Sarah and Trevor in the gym, alone, a few hours before the hoodie incident. She wasn't crying. She wasn't fragile. She was directing. She pointed to the bench where Jake usually sat. She told Trevor what to say, how to say it, when to laugh, when to flex. It was theater, a setup, a carefully staged humiliation. When the clip ended, Coach Miller just sat there. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, he said, "I was in the room when it happened, and I still didn't see it. I didn't offer him comfort. I didn't want his guilt. I wanted the truth." That same week, Alexandra found another file. It was buried in Sarah's laptop, tucked deep inside a folder labeled Applications. It wasn't for college. It was a spreadsheet, a list of boys. Each row contained a name, a photo, and notes, comments about their insecurities, jokes, private references, but the last column was titled Trophy. That's where she logged what she had kept from each one: a necklace, a poem, a sweatshirt, a set of socks. Jake's name was at the very bottom. His row read, in all caps, hoodie, masterpiece. The word hit like a blade. This wasn't mourning. This was collection, curation, a serial script. Jake wasn't the only one, just the most complete and the most visible. Alexander's courage lit a fire. Other students began to come forward, some anonymously, some quietly, but they all told the same story. Sarah praised them until they depended on her. Then she isolated them, cut them from their friends. Then came the teasing, the jabs, the control, and finally the fall, a public humiliation, a discarded bond, a souvenir left in her vault. They called it flattery, turned inside out. One boy said she made him stop eating lunch. Another admitted he tried to take his own life weeks after she ended things. A third confessed he hadn't realized how broken he was until Jake died. And he recognized himself in the aftermath. None of them had spoken up before, because none of them thought anyone would believe them. Then came Trevor. He stood in front of the school board, holding a folder full of screenshots and printouts. His hands shook, his voice cracked, but he didn't stop. He admitted everything. How Sarah blackmailed him with photos from parties, old text messages, academic secrets, how she promised to protect him if he did what she asked, like a puppeteer with invisible strings. Trevor didn't ask for sympathy. He didn't try to justify it. I didn't know I was helping destroy someone, he said, until it was too late. His testimony hit like a gavel against wood. Final, loud, and echoing through the room. After that, the school counselor who once dismissed me called to apologize. I didn't answer, because this was no longer about regret. This was about reckoning. One parent messaged me after seeing her son's hoodie in one of Sarah's photos. He'd never even spoken to her. Another teacher came forward after rereading an essay Sarah had submitted. Half the lines were lifted from Jake's old writing assignments. Her trophies weren't just keepsakes. They were records of conquest, and the stage she once stood on to mourn. It was becoming a courtroom, her final performance. Jake's birthday vigil was still on the calendar. But for the first time, the audience was no longer leaning forward to cry. They were sitting back, watching with their arms crossed, waiting to see if the girl who built a brand on grief would finally be forced to face what she had done. And in the shadows of that gathering storm, I knew Jake's voice wasn't silent anymore. It was multiplied. Jake's birthday came with candles. Pale blue flyers appeared across the school, a night of remembrance, healing, and hope. Organized by Sarah Thompson. At the center was Jake's photo, smiling, calm, trusting. The same photo I had taken outside our garage, weeks before his world collapsed. There was no mention of the growing controversy, no acknowledgement of the complaints, the evidence, the voices rising, and especially no mention of me. His father. I had been erased from the program like I never existed, but I didn't protest. I didn't need to speak anymore. I needed to watch. I arrived early, coat zipped high, hood low, sitting at the edge of the lawn where rows of candles had already been set out by student volunteers. From a distance, it could have passed for a real tribute. Soft lights, gentle music, curated grief. But up close, I saw it for what it was, a stage. Sarah arrived dressed in a flowing gray sweater, hair braided over one shoulder, the hoodie folded delicately over her arm like a holy relic. She smiled faintly, eyes red but perfectly framed in mascara. Behind her trailed two drama club girls with candles, and, as always, Trevor. This time, pale and heavy with shame. When she stepped up to the microphone, the crowd hushed. Her voice cracked just enough. Her hands trembled on cue. She spoke of Jake's beautiful silence, of his struggles nobody knew, of late-night talks and promises she wished she'd kept. She quoted poems. She thanked the community. She cried when she held up the hoodie and said, "Jake gave me this the last week we spent together." It reminded him of who he wanted to become. Her voice broke at just the right spot, and for a moment, people leaned in until someone cleared their throat. From the crowd came a voice, calm, sharp. "He didn't give it to you, you took it." Heads turned. Sarah froze for just a second, then forced a smile. "We all grieve differently," she murmured, trying to keep the story on track. But another voice followed, though you told Trevor to wear it. That one came from a teacher. Jake's old physics instructor, the one who had discovered Sarah's plagiarized college essay. Then came Alexandra, candle in hand, face pale but steady. Her voice didn't shake. You rehearsed your crying face in the mirror before this. Gasps broke through the quiet. Sarah stammered something about being misunderstood. Grief affects people in strange ways, she said. I've been through so much. But no one was leaning in anymore. A parent asked where the fundraiser money had gone. Another asked if the wellness foundation she claimed to donate to even existed. One student quietly asked why she had posted Jake's private messages online, captioned with emojis and hashtags like it was just content. No one shouted. But no one believed her either. She looked around for support, but Trevor had quietly stepped away. The Candle Girls, once proud sentinels of her grief, were now whispering behind cupped hands. Alexandra stood firm, shoulders squared, eyes unwavering, and the crowd, once a sea of sympathies, had dissolved into something far more dangerous to her performance individual minds. Thinking, questioning, awake. As for me, I didn't move, I didn't speak, I didn't need to. The silence, this time, was hers to carry. This wasn't my fight anymore. It was Jake's. His truth was speaking without me. The vigil ended without ceremony. No closing speech, no hugs, no candle walk, just students shuffling away in pairs, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Only certain that something had broken. Some blew out their candles before lighting them. Others threw them into the bin before they reached the sidewalk. Sarah left alone, not escorted, not comforted. Just a quiet figure slipping through the side gate before the last few students turned their backs. She didn't drop the hoodie, but she didn't wear it again, and in the eyes of the people around her, it was no longer hers. Jake's name had been returned. Not by force, not by fury, but by truth, made undeniable. The hoodie remained in her arms that night, but every heart watching knew it never belonged to her. After the vigil, there was no headline, no formal fallout, just silence. But this time, silence wasn't on her side. People looked at Sarah differently. They didn't accuse her outright. Not yet. But the warmth was gone. Smiles became nods. Support turned to distance. Even her closest allies stopped reposting her tributes. The air had shifted. And eventually, she stopped wearing Jake's hoodie, not because she gave it back, but because it stopped working. It no longer told the story she needed. Then, one afternoon, it came to me. Delivered in a plain plastic garment bag, folded carefully like it still mattered. No note from Sarah, just a letter from her mother. The kind of letter full of careful language. She's working through things. We didn't realize what was happening. Thank you for your grace. I didn't need their grace. I held the hoodie and knew instantly, it had always been his. Even after everything. Even after her performances, her photos, her lies, her presence had faded from the fabric. What remained was Jake, the boy who wore it when he still smiled at dinner, the boy who thought discipline might be enough to make someone stay. I didn't pack it away, I didn't clean it, I placed it back over his chair, just like he used to. Sleeves twisted, hood off-center, as if he'd be back in a minute. But of course, he wouldn't. And that's why I couldn't stop there. Jake hadn't died because of a hoodie or a heartbreak. He died because the system around him refused to believe someone like Sarah could cause harm. Because adults chose comfort over confrontation. Because cruelty wore mascara and spoke in soft tones. So I used what he left behind. His journal became our blueprint, his story, our warning, with other families. I started a small network. Nothing flashy, just meetings, workshops, printed handouts. We didn't talk about bullying in the way schools usually did. We talked about control, about manipulation, about how emotional abuse doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, smiling, while it takes everything from you. We trained teachers to recognize patterns. We hosted private talks for counselors. And one day, when a father from a nearby town showed me his son's journal, eerily similar to Jake's, I realized something. Jake had already saved someone. We created a scholarship in his name, not for athletes, not for valedictorians, for survivors. For kids who had been pushed to the edge and clawed their way back. The first recipient was a quiet boy who once tried to starve himself to keep someone's affection. He got help in time. Jake didn't. But now, his story would outlive the girl who tried to erase him. Sarah was quietly transferred to a residential treatment facility in another state. Her parents moved soon after. It wasn't public. Just a slow vanishing act. One day she was there, the next she wasn't. She sent one final letter, typed, clinical. Probably reviewed by therapists or lawyers. She wrote about remorse, about lessons learned, about how she hoped Jake's death wouldn't define her forever. I didn't respond, because it was never about her. This was about Jake. about a boy who believed kindness meant worthiness, who thought love could be earned through suffering, who wanted, more than anything, to be enough. Now he was, because through his story, David Chen started eating again. Trevor stood up and told the truth. Alexander refused to laugh along with cruelty ever again. And other boys, ones I'll never meet, began stepping forward. Hoodie is back in his room. But the shield he left behind, his story, his warning, his words, that doesn't belong to me. It belongs to every kid still trying to make sense of shame. And maybe that's what legacy really is. Not the life someone lived, but the lives they helped save after they were gone.